Hello, and thank you for watching this webinar on the PMAP 2012-2013 closeout process. The target audience for this webinar is our select PMAP coordinators who have been identified by Office and Division Directors to help manage the closeout process this year. During this webinar, we're going to review some of the new processes for this year's PMAP closeout. And I'll be referencing information that was sent in a couple of emails to the group from Sandra Quintanar. I believe one went out March 6th and the other March 18th to the select PMAP coordinators. There were a number of attachments to those emails, and one of them referenced roles and responsibilities for the PMAP coordinators. And we'll be reviewing that information starting right now. So the changes to the PMAP closeout process for this year, the biggest one is that we have asked divisions to identify you, our PMAP coordinators, to help streamline the process. PMAP coordinators are responsible for tracking completion of PMAPs in their assigned unit or facility, for entering final PMAP ratings into a new data entry tool that we will be reviewing in a few minutes, and scanning PMAPs and related documents to HR. Another change is that we are no longer going to be using the Excel spreadsheets. So for those of you who are new, in past years we have been using Excel spreadsheets to enter final PMAP ratings. The spreadsheets were actually sent to all of our 750 plus supervisors across the organization. The spreadsheets contained a list of their direct reports, and they used them to enter their final ratings and sent them to HR. But however, this year OIT has created a new data entry tool for us. It's not super fancy, there's not a lot of bells and whistles, but it does represent an improvement over the spreadsheets. The final change is that we are asking you to scan PMAP documents to HR rather than mailing hard copies. This change is based on feedback that we received that mailing hard copies was problematic. For example, a fear that the documents would get lost in the mail and that scanning them would be better. And we'll review that process in a minute. A quick review of our PMAP timeline and some due dates. These dates have not changed since last year. Our annual cycle does end on March 31st, and those final PMAP ratings are due to HR by April 30th. So this means using that tool, entering the final ratings, and as you'll see in the tool there's a way for them to be emailed directly to or uploaded to HR, and that would have to be done by April 30th. Then in terms of scanning the PMAPs and accompanying forms, those are due by May 31st. If you're aware of any disputes that are going on in your area, we ask that you do not wait to send in ratings or documents. Go ahead and send them in as you have them with the final ratings that were originally provided by supervisors. If there's any changes to those ratings as a result of the dispute process, we'll go ahead and make those changes in our end. If you have employees who are away on extended leave, we ask that you reach out to Sandra Quintanar here in HR for guidance about how to handle those absences. She does have a process where you can request, or supervisor can request a kind of a waiver in certain circumstances. So please reach out to Sandra Quintanar in those circumstances. This is a list of the documents that go with PMAPs. This is the same as last year. A completed PMAP packet will include the form itself. These are all copies signed by the employee. Certificate of compliance, sometimes referred to as the outside employment agreement. Fraud policy, confidentiality agreement, and any flex time or flex place, alternative workplace kind of agreements that are in place. A checklist of these documents is also included on the emails sent out earlier this month, and you will receive reminders throughout the month of April as well. Let's review the process put in place to scan all these documents to HR. Before I begin, we have heard concerns that this is an awful lot of emails being sent through Google. We have assurances that Google will not be a problem handling all these documents. The PMAP coordinators that you're going to be sending these documents to will create a process for continually removing the documents from Google and placing them on an outside repository of some sort so that they are not taking up tons of space on any kind of internal server. So again, these instructions are included in documents on the recent emails that you received. What you'll be doing is creating a separate PDF for each employee containing all of the documents for that employee. So for example, if you have 10 employees, you'll create 10 separate PDF files that will include all the documents for that employee. So we do not want one large file that contains 20 different fraud policies for 20 different employees. We'd like one PDF file per employee. The naming convention is quite simple. Go ahead and name the file last name, first name, middle initial. PMAPs are actually stored by name, so there is no need to include information about the division or the location or the facility. It just gets stored by the name anyway. Then you're going to go ahead and email to your district's HR PMAP coordinator. I realize that's the same term we're using for you. So in our Northern Western District, we have sort of a super PMAP coordinator, Sandra Quintanar. You have her email address here. And in the Southern District, those documents will go to Denise Howard. In the subject line of the email, you can put PMAP documents and the word encrypt. Please do remember to put the word encrypt. We had a question about whether Google Gmail encrypts all files sent. I don't believe this is the case, so we are asking you go ahead and put in that word encrypt. You'll email directly from your work Gmail account. You may attach multiple files to the same email, being aware that at some point Google does have a limit on the total size, file size, including all attachments of an email that can be sent. According to Google, this is 25 megabytes, which is 25,000 kilobytes. I myself have not been able to send quite that many, so I would recommend that you shoot a little bit below that 25 megabyte limit. And how will you know if you're doing that? Well, on this screen, as you know, as you're adding attachments in Google, it does list the file size. So K is a kilobyte. 1,000 kilobytes would be 1 megabyte. So really you have 25,000 kilobytes. So you can keep track as you're attaching them. If you do exceed the limit by accident, Gmail does send you an error message saying the message did not go through because it was too large. We're going to move now to that new PMAP data entry tool that you'll be using. Very simply, this tool is an Access file. It is an Access database. It was emailed to our PMAP coordinators, I believe, Monday, March 18th. It was emailed as a zip file because the file was quite large and we wanted to make sure it goes through. So there were instructions, I believe, in the memo that was attached to that email indicating how to download the file to your H drive, unzip or extract the file. And I understand from OIT that you must use your H drive, not your desktop, not any other drive. It may let you save it to your desktop or other drives, but when you actually go in to use it and you start entering ratings, you may get an error message that says it's read-only if it's not on your H drive. I think probably the trickiest part to this process is actually going to be downloading and unzipping the file if you're not super savvy on extracting files and using Google's. I think this will be just kind of a hurdle you have to get through. But we do have step-by-step instructions that when you see the email and you see that it is attached to the zip file here, you will right-click on download. That'll bring up a box where you can choose Save Link As, locate your H drive, and save the file there. Then you'll actually go to your H drive and you'll right-click on the zip file itself. You may get a little security warning message, but you can simply click yes to it. Our OIT group did create this file, so it is fine. We don't know why we're getting that security warning message. Then there'll be an option to extract all. Google will default to the H drive since that's where you saved it, and it will extract the files into a folder called Final Performance Evaluations FY 2012. after you click Next, Next, and Finish. So I myself, when I was using this, received an error message when I tried to save to my H drive because I had too many files already on my H drive. So if you are someone who does use your H drive for storing a lot of documents, you may need to temporarily move other documents to a different location in order to use this tool. That is what I did. I removed some folders from my H drive simply to my desktop, and then I was able to save and unzip the file without a problem. Once you get into the actual file itself, you'll see it's pretty straightforward. The steps that you'll use, you'll go supervisor by supervisor, so one at a time. You'll be selecting a supervisor from a drop-down box, reviewing the list of direct reports, or the staff list we'll call it for that supervisor, making updates as needed by adding and deleting employees, entering in PMAP ratings for the employees, and then as you'll see in a moment, there's a button that says email ratings, and it actually sends the ratings to HR. And you'll repeat this for each supervisor that you're responsible for. So kind of similar to the Excel spreadsheets used in the past, it is done supervisor by supervisor. We'll start looking at some screenshots now of some of the steps that I just reviewed. And I'll preface by saying that with any new application, any new kind of tool that you're using, there is a little bit of a learning curve. We have tested this out with several individuals, and hopefully we've fixed any kind of glitches or quirks that it has, but there still may be a few. So we do implore for your patience as you're using this new tool, and as you're experiencing issues, you'll be reaching out to Sandra Quintanar, and we'll see how we can address those. So the tool itself, as we're going to review, there's drop-downs for supervisors, drop-downs for employees. Here's that staff list that we're talking about, a button for emailing ratings. So you'd begin the process by selecting a supervisor from the drop-down. As you're typing in the last name of the supervisor, it'll start trying to guess that supervisor for you. So, excuse me. You can either select the drop-down and scroll down and find the supervisor, or if you start typing in the name, it will probably jump to that supervisor name. Then you can select them, hit enter. And when you do that, it'll bring up the staff list. So this is the list of direct reports that are included in our timekeeping system, the Kronos system. So what I will say about this list is that you may very well need to make some modifications by adding and deleting employees if the list is not accurate. What happens is that every year in February, our payroll timekeeping department does send out a request. I believe this year it went directly to supervisors and to unit timekeepers to ask that they update Kronos with accurate reporting relationships. I believe this year they actually sent out a great big spreadsheet that said, here are the reporting relationships we have in Kronos. Please let us know what updates you have so that we can prepare as best we can for PMAP and have accurate lists. So to the extent that those updates were made and sent in a timely manner, this list should be accurate. If not, or there were very recent changes, then you'll need to make some updates. And we'll go through that in a second. Areas here that are grayed out you cannot make changes to, so you cannot change somebody's EID number, for example, but there are other areas that you can make changes to if needed. For example, if the position number has changed recently, you can actually change that here. To remove an employee, there's simply a button that says remove, and when you click on that, it says, are you sure? And you click yes, and that will take them off of the list. If you need to add an employee, your first step will be to use the employee drop-down list. And again, as you start typing a last name, it's going to go ahead and jump to that section. So I started typing in Smith, and it brought me to all the Smiths. So then I can scroll down and find the one I want. select them, hit enter, and then they will show up on the list. We had a question of, will it let you add an employee who is already on somebody else's, some other supervisor's list? And the answer is yes. So one thing to keep in mind about this database is that it is simply a file that's sent to you and resides on your H drive. It is not connected to any other PMAP coordinator's list. So any changes that you make entering in ratings, they're only viewable in your file. They don't show up in other PMAP coordinators' files. So if you're entering ratings, it's not like they're going to show up in a different PMAP coordinator's file because, again, it's just a static file. It's not connected. Not an actual HRIS system, as hopefully one day we will have and make our lives easier. So what if you look on that employee list and you don't find the employee you need? There is a way to create a new employee. When you click on that button, Create New Employee, it's going to bring up a box that looks like this where you can enter in the information. It is going to ask you for the EID number. It will ask that it be the full 9 digits. If you try to enter in fewer than 9 digits, you'll get an error message indicating that you should put in 9 digits. Position number, you do not need to enter in an email. Perhaps that employee does not have an email address yet with us. And then the agency, IHA, IKA, whatever you have. Again, since this is simply your database that sits on your H drive, if you make a mistake and you need to add an employee again, that's fine. You can enter in 10 Peter Parkers. It's not going to hurt anything. But just be sure that you only have the one right Peter Parker listed in your list. After you click Save, what you'll need to do is anytime you're creating a new employee or creating a supervisor, as we'll talk about in a second, you'll need to go up to the very top here in this menu, and under Records, there's an option to refresh. Please refresh your file, and that will make it so that the employee then, the new employee that you just created, then shows up in that employee drop-down, and then you can add them to the staff list. Let's say you've got the list the way you want it and you're ready to start entering in ratings. You'll simply choose from the drop-down under Rating one of our 3 rating levels. It'll populate with the date that you did that. And then if the reviewer is not already pre-populated, you can simply just type that in. It will not let you email ratings until you have all of them on a particular staff list entered. So you cannot enter partial, you cannot send in partial lists. However, you can enter some ratings, exit the file, and come back at a later date, and it will save your work in progress. So you'll see those ratings, whatever you enter, will be saved for you. So we'll leave it up to you if you want to wait until you actually have all ratings in for a particular supervisor, whether you want to go in and enter them all at once or if you want to kind of do it as you go. When you are ready to email the ratings and you click this Email Ratings button, it'll pull up a form like this. You will enter in your email address and your Gmail password. So not the supervisor's email address, your email address. This will be pre-populated with Sandra Quintanar's email. Leave it as Sandra Quintanar's email, so even though you're sending in scanned documents to a different individual in the Southern District, Sandra Quintanar does receive all of the ratings using this Access data entry tool. So you will keep Sandra Quintanar the same. Do not change that. The subject line will be pre-populated. It will start with the supervisor name, PMAP ratings, and it'll have the word encrypt. You are able to type in here in this message box, for example, if you are making a change, something was entered in incorrectly and you want to resend things, you can indicate that this is a resubmission. And then when you click send, it will come up with a box indicating that your ratings were successfully sent. What the system is going to do, you will notice, is that on your H drive where you saved the file, for every group of ratings that you send, so every supervisor's ratings that you send, it's going to create this text file on that H drive. It'll say DR for direct report 4, and it'll have the supervisor name. It's actually a blank file. You can go ahead and delete it. It's just something that the system does. In order to send the ratings, it has to create this file. So you can simply delete it from your H drive. The last thing I'd like to show you is if you have the case where maybe you have a new supervisor who's not in the supervisor drop-down, so perhaps it's either a new employee or someone who has recently became a supervisor, or perhaps was not listed as a supervisor in the Kronos system, you may need to create them. So when you click on Create New Supervisor, it's going to bring up this box asking you, is this person a current employee? The process for creating a new supervisor is just a little bit different if we're dealing with a current employee or a brand new employee. So if you click yes, this person is a current employee, what it's going to do is ask you to select that employee from a drop-down box. And when you click Create Supervisor, and then as I said before, you'll have to refresh up in that top menu. I don't have it on the screen here, but you'll be clicking refresh to then have that new supervisor appear in the supervisor drop-down box. Then you can go find them in the supervisor drop-down box and begin adding direct reports to their list. If it's a brand new supervisor, you will have to create the entire list. They won't have any direct reports attached to them in Kronos because they were never listed as a supervisor in Kronos to begin with. So a couple extra steps there. If you have the case where the supervisor is not listed as a current employee in our system, perhaps they're brand new, then you would click no, they're not a current employee. Then you have to go through the process of creating the new employee first, refreshing, then creating new supervisor, and at that point saying, yes, now this person is a current employee because you just created them as a new employee. So a couple extra steps there. So I'll repeat that if I said that too fast. If you're creating a new supervisor who's not a current employee, you have to first create them as a new employee, click refresh. Now they're showing up on the employee list. Then you have to go through the process that we just reviewed a minute ago where you create new supervisor by clicking yes, and then they'll be in that drop-down box that I showed on the previous screen, and then you can find them in your supervisor list after you click refresh again. And these screenshots and steps are in a Word document manual that again was sent, I believe, on the most recent email on March 18th that included the database. So you have that as a reference as well. I'm giving you Sandra Quintanar's email address as your main contact person as you're using this system and you're getting up to speed and you're having questions. If you would, please reach out to Sandra Quintanar. If they're very technical in nature and there are error messages that are being received, hopefully not, Sandra may have to direct you to OIT Help Desk, or we'll get OIT involved to help problem solve whatever's going on. But it is a pretty straightforward system, and I anticipate you will not have many difficulties once you get over the initial learning curve. So again, appreciate your patience in learning this new process and learning a new system, and for helping us have a successful closeout this year. So thank you again for watching. I'm going to leave this email address contact on the screen for you. Thank you again.